Jordan, my brother.
Hey, Chris, how are you, man?
I am blessed. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today. This is fun to share this conversation with you, brother.
I mean, I am so excited. I've been checking out your stuff, and you look like a superstar beyond. And we're gonna jump into all of that. But before we do, let me just highlight who you are to my community, and we'll do the same to yours. So, Jordan is a phenomenal professional speaker, a performance coach, an entrepreneur, business owner, and beyond. And for your community as well, my name is Christopher Dedeyan. I am a professional speaker and a peak performance coach on that end. So, my brother, before we jump on to all of that beautifulness that we're going to talk about, I just want to start off by saying and asking you, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for asking. Life is good. We're happy, healthy. We have three young girls. It's summertime, so our girls have been home and lots of quality family time. So life is good. How are you doing, man?
I am blessed, man. I just came back from a trip to Vancouver, so it was good to take a little step back from work and just see some friends and family. But let me just take a little step back. Three little girls, that is amazing. Now, the question is, are you excited for your girls to go back to school, or you're enjoying every single minute of it?
You know what? Summertime is really special. I could take like 3 more months of summer. We work from home, my wife and I, both, so she runs the business. I run my mouth. It works out. And like, it's a random Tuesday or Wednesday, and we all gonna have lunch together, right? So like, there's a real blessing in having our girls at home, working from home. So we just experience a lot of quality time. So to answer your question, I would take a couple, 2, 3 more months of summer.
I love that. I love that. So that just speaks volumes to your kids and you raising them. And let's dive into that because you essentially go all around the world, talk about performance and give some speeches with some amazing people that you shared the stage with. How did you end up being a speaker? What is the thing you love speaking about the most? What can you talk to us about that?
Well, at the end of the day, I believe that in leadership, more is caught than taught. So no one ever really taught me how to speak or coach. However, I had some examples and some role models that really allowed me to jump into the space. And I got to watch how they interacted with people and how they coached people and how they built their brand. And so I'd give a shout out to like Ben Newman, John Wright Sr. I mean, just had some really influential leaders in my life and impactful leaders that showed me, how this business can be built. So to answer your question about how I got into the space, it was really a couple leaders that were in the space that I had a friendship with. And I had a financial planning business. I sort of started the coaching business on the side. And Chris, because of God's grace and great people around me, the coaching business sort of blew up. We developed coaching partners, and it's continued to multiply every day ever since. So we're just really fortunate and blessed.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I love the fact that you mentioned between God's bless. And talk to me about your coaching practice. Do you have any coaches under you? What do you essentially coach about? Is it just performance for entrepreneurs, high-end CEOs, C-suites? Is it for anybody? How do you do all of that aspect? How do you attract your clientele and so on?
Yeah, so we have 10 coaching partners. All of them specialize in different areas, so they all have a different skill set. And we were very strategic in picking and selecting coaches that bring something different to the table. They all have shared values, so they're faith-filled and family-oriented. They're others-focused, but at the end of the day, they coach on something different. So
Mhm.
we've got some professional athletes, some people in the pastoral world. We have some real estate agents, some financial advisors, all have different industry experience. As far as my coaching, Chris, I spend a lot of time on mindset,
Mhm.
a lot of time on communication and relationship building. And most of the people in our world are in the people business or they're in the performance business. So they're salespeople, they're entrepreneurs, they're athletes, they're busy driving results. And if we can help people drive results while maintaining strong values and keeping their culture, then that's a win. So to give you a window into my world, that's a little bit about what I do on a day-to-day basis with coaching.
I love that. There's so many things to unpack there. We're going to just dive into it in a few seconds. Just the fact that you mentioned coaching partners, they have different specialties, and whatever client you get, you kind of direct them towards the right partner that you have. And you did mention that you more in the mindset side of things. Now, talk to me about or give the best advice that you could give to somebody that's starting up or somebody that's been an entrepreneur for X amount of years and is having a hard time with everything that might be going on. What are some of the main mindset tricks, methodologies, habits that you might give to really make people level up and live that performance lifestyle?
Well, first off, I think we need to start with this foundation that the biggest battles we will ever face in life life or business, period, right? The biggest battles that we will ever face occur in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
You have to acknowledge that, right? Craig Rochelle says it best. He said, your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. What comes into your mind comes out in your life. And you cannot have a positive life and a negative mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we really have to protect our mind. We have to guard our thoughts. And the reality is that we have 75,000 thoughts a day. 80% of those 75,000 thoughts are negative. So we're filled with negativity. And we have to take mental reps. We have to practice our mental toughness. And I think most people forget that, right? Most people treat mindset like it's just a switch that I sort of flip on, right? I just choose to be positive, just choose to show up the right way. And it's just simply not true. So in the same way that a salesperson has to work on their communication skill or the way that they deliver words, they also have to work on their mindset or their mental toughness. And so we encourage our coaching clients to take mental reps. Part of that is having a vision statement, right? Getting your future on paper, the place where you can see it. Part of it is externalization, right? Voicing your thoughts out loud. When you voice a thought out loud, it becomes 10 times more powerful than if it just stays in your brain. Everything happens twice, first in your mind, then in reality. So we want people to think it, but then we want them to speak it. Words create worlds. I want people to verbalize what they're thinking about. The other thing we'd have people pay attention to is their environment. Your environmental game drives your mental game, and your mental game drives everything else in your life. But it really starts with your environmental game. The people, places, and things that habitually show up in your life. And so if we're talking about people, I want people to focus on the people that they spend time with, right? The old adage that everybody talks about is you become like the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with is profoundly true. The people that enter into your context that have close proximity to you have great influence over you. And so I want to pay attention to the people in my proximity because proximity is power. And those people, whether I like it or not, they're actually driving a lot of my thoughts. They're driving a lot of my beliefs. They're also driving my doubts, right? And people are triggers. So in the same way that a song can be a trigger, or a smell can be a trigger, or a certain place can be a trigger, right? Those things can trigger our thoughts in a certain direction. Well, people are also triggers. People are triggers, right? Ed Milet says it like this, like somebody shows up on your phone and it triggers you for better or worse, right? A friend calls you. A friend calls Christopher. Some friends are gonna be like, yes, like they're calling me subconsciously, right? I'm like, we're gonna talk about the future. I'm excited. They're gonna have big energy. We're talking about things that matter, right? We're positive. Other friends, other people, they call you. You see their name on your phone, and what do you think?
Oh, shit.
Again, man, they're going to talk about the past. They're going to talk about problems. They're going to bring bad energy. And so we might even like those people or care for those people, but the fact of the matter is not everyone triggers you for good. Not everyone triggers you forward. And so for somebody that wants to start paying attention to mindset and what you're thinking about, you got to really consider the people that are in your proximity. Get your vision on paper, speak it out loud. Words create worlds. Those are just a few tips, a few starting places for people as they think about developing their mindset.
I love that. I love that, Jordan. You were so spot on. That was just delicious on delicious. So 10 points for Gryffindor right there. But let me just highlight a couple of them so really people could hone in on this. So the main thing Jordan just said about mindset, first of all, you have to stand at guard at the door of your mind. Like he mentioned, there's over like 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and they usually repeat the same ones that are previous day. So what you have to do that is 3 things that Jordan said. First and foremost, write down what your goal is, then verbalize it, because once you verbalize it, it's so much more true. And like you said, be careful of your environment. Who are the people you hang around with? And it is so true. And I love the fact that you highlighted that, because the more you hang around those high level people, the more you will attract that and success will come towards you. So it's just a matter of understanding these 3 steps. So I love that you mentioned that. As well, previously, Jordan, you mentioned that business is a people's game in so many words. That's what you kind of said and you kind of alluded to. Can you unpack that a bit more? Because that's an adage and a belief that I truly have. And the fact that you mentioned it kind of rang to me, and I wanted to have your opinion on that.
Well, here's the deal, right? Whether you're in the coaching space like us, whether you work in real estate or finance or mortgage lending or construction, you are in the human connection business first, right? So before you're a financial advisor, you're in the human connection business. Before you're in the real estate business, you're in the human connection business. Before you build homes for other people, you're actually in the human connection business. Apart from a few industries where you don't deal with people like at all, okay? And even in those industries, you had to at least deal with somebody to get into the industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get promoted, you probably have to deal with somebody again. So I could argue that almost everybody who's working is in the people business. You're in the human connection business. And so what that means is we got to spend time on what creates human connection. Like, what is it about this conversation that allows Chris to feel like, hey, Jordan is safe. Hey, Jordan is a person of value. Jordan is somebody that I can trust. Jordan is somebody that I want to continue to spend time with. And I'm not sure that we give those thoughts enough credibility, right? Enough credence. Like we really need to think about that more often. And it's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it. Right? It's not just about your product, it's about your process. Like we really got to think about how we show up if we're in the people business, because if you're in the people business, you're in the human connection business before you're in whatever business it is or industry it is that you're in. So I spent a lot of time, man, thinking about what creates human connection, how we build trust and rapport, and ultimately what develops relationships.
I love that. I love that. It's so spot on once again, because you just mentioned it. Everybody's in the people business. Even if you're in certain industries, like you said, that you're probably isolated, you're by yourself, even that has barrier to entry with people interactions, from interviews to connections to so on and so forth. So understanding that you're not in the sales world, you're not in the real estate world, but you're in the people world. That's what business is one human being connecting to another and just having this great energy and synergy. Like you mentioned, like, hey, how can Jordan show up to be awesome for Chris and vice versa? It's all about setting that intention and really noticing that we're just two human beings talking together and sharing this with amazing other people watching this. So 100% agree with you on that. And Jordan, I have another question. As you, as a speaker, and like I said, I was checking out your stuff, and you've been on many stages in front of thousands of people. And I'm kind of going to turn it around, because when you're the speaker, you're on stage, the light's on you, and as it's very obvious, you're very eloquent and you know what you're talking about and you have a lot to say. What have you ever learned from the crowds that you were in front of? Have you ever learned anything from just being in that position of seeing the crowd? What would you speak to that?
Here's one thing that I'd point out, Chris. It's really interesting for anybody that speaks, okay? Regardless of whether you speak a lot, a little, maybe you've never really given a talk ever, but you're going to present to a group. Here's what I'd have you pay attention to. Pay attention to the paradox of education. And here's what I mean by that, okay? And this is what I've learned from crowds, okay? The people in the crowd that have the least reason to learn, in other words, they're the most productive, right? They're the most successful. They're the ones that are paying attention, notes, and they're active listening, like they're engaged, right? And then there's other people who are oftentimes disengaged, right? And usually they're the people who are not as productive and they're not leading. And here's the thing, it has zero to do with what I say. It has nothing to do with me. They have a mindset. The leaders in the room, it's like, hey, I'm going to show up to learn. I'm going to show up to grow and get better. And regardless of who's speaking, regardless of what day it is, regardless of what's going well or not going well in my life, like, I'm going to show up to get better, because I believe that I can learn from any person that I meet and from any situation that I'm in. And so I just love that. Like, those people, for me, when I'm speaking to a crowd, they just give me energy and encouragement. I try to shout those people out. I'm like, look, here's the 25-year CEO, and she is just dialed in to the conversation. And it's got nothing to do with me. She's just ready to learn. And I love those people. So I'm learning from the crowd all the time. I have people talk back to me. I try to make it interactive. Energy is everything. You know, when you're speaking to a crowd, it's all about connecting. It's not about communicating. And so we work really hard to connect with our audience in a meaningful way. And I think typically that makes a difference, you know, in delivering your message.
Jordan, I love that so much. And if you permit, I'm going to tell you a little analogy or story that kind of happened in my life. When before I was a speaker and a coach, I was a real estate broker. And before getting into that industry, one of my friends was a broker, and he was just kind of guiding me, mentoring me, and helping me out. And he's like, hey, Chris, there's this top end realtor that's putting on an event. He's like, I would love for you to come and kind of, you know, learn about the real estate world in Montreal and so on and so forth. Beautiful. So I go there, just fresh out of school, of a real estate school. And I noticed that every single person that's sitting in the front row are the top end realtors, like the ones that you see their faces everywhere. And I was surprised because I thought it was going to be a bunch of newbies like me going there to learn. And then I noticed exactly like you said, the ones that make millions of dollars selling property are sitting in the front row, and the other ones that are just getting by, whatever, are sitting in the back row. And I realized that instantly. Oh, wow, education and being humble is a lifetime thing. And I love that you highlighted that. So thank you very much, Jordan, for bringing that up. And I have another question over here because I know that your business is growing and you have a lot of people under you and you kind of deal with a huge community of people that you support. What are some of the tips of leadership that you could talk about? If there's like some top 3 tips of leadership that you live by, that you teach others, what would that be?
Well, I think one thing we always have to think about and be aware of is how we're leading ourselves. So there's 2 things, like whether I'm working with an emerging leader or developed leader, that we spend a lot of time in leadership is, if you want to learn to lead others, you have to learn to follow.
Mm-hmm.
We never stop following. You're always following. You're always learning from somebody, right? Like we just talked about those leaders in the audience. In that moment, they're following, right? They're learning, they're taking notes, they're engaged, they're listening, right? And so the best leaders are also the best followers. And the first step of leading is following. I can't be a great leader if I can't first learn to follow. So I'm paying attention to followership. If we're trying to select or identify a new leader, I'm paying attention to the way that somebody follows. And the reality is, in most organizations, the most influential person isn't always the person with positional power. It's the person with personal power. Mm-hmm. When you have personal power, you can lead from anywhere, right? Because personal power is influence. And you get influence when you follow through, when you do what you say you're going to do, when you take initiative, when you treat people well, when you're kind, when you're respectful, when you're energetic. And so for an early stage leader that wants to work on leadership, I'd say, hey, follow. Do the little things that other people don't want to do, and you'll eventually have influence that other people don't have. And never stop following. Always follow. Learn to follow well. Ask questions. Learn. Take notes. Be engaged. Make somebody feel special. Be kind. To me, those are tried and true leadership lessons that will never fade. And we all need to remember those things on the leadership continuum, wherever you're at, whether you're leading a huge crowd, a small crowd, a bunch of people, a few people. The reality is most people are leading because they have influence. And John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So if you have influence, you're leading. The goal is to use that influence to the benefit of others and continue to drive the impact forward.
Jordan, I wish we were face to face. I swear to God, bro, I would give you a hug right now. Everything you're saying is so freaking spot on. I'm just like,
you're a blessing. You're an encouragement. I appreciate it.
Yo, I'm telling you, man. I'm like just holding back. I don't know if you're seeing. I'm like legit smiling. I'm like nodding the whole time. I'm like, this is so accurate. When it comes to leadership, the best leaders are the best followers. Before you're a leader, you have to learn how to follow. And then once you're a leader, like you just so eloquently said, you still have to follow. It's this balancing act. You're not always like, hey, let me lead. No, there's this balancing act. So I love that you mentioned that, because that's so valuable for anybody that is an entrepreneur, business owner, or just living life, understanding that dichotomy of when to lead, when to follow, and it's perfectly okay to do both of them. It's not diminishing your position or bringing a position higher. So I love that you highlighted that. And Jordan, actually, I'm not even sure, which part of the States are you from?
I live in Iowa.
Iowa.
Middle of the country, man. Midwest, cornfields out my window. We're in Southeast Iowa.
So, okay, first of all, that's really interesting. Tell me about the central United States, because obviously the coast, East Coast, West Coast, get a lot of rep. A lot of people are there. Tell me about what is one of the best things of being in central United States, and what is one of the worst things about being in central United States?
All right. Best things about being in central United States is it's peaceful. It's just peaceful. I live in a college town. It's where the University of Iowa is at. So it's busy. There's stuff going on. I would say for Iowa, it's diverse, right? Iowa's not a very diverse place, but for Iowa, it's diverse. So we appreciate that. I love living in a place that has stuff to do with different types of people from different backgrounds. So we love that about where we live. But it's peaceful. I could go out my door, see cornfields, and then I can go down the street and be at an event, right? So you can get away, you can find peace. The downside to living in the central United States in the middle of nowhere is connecting flights. So if you know that, if you're living in a city and you want to move to the middle of nowhere, it will be a pain in the butt to get anywhere because you will have to take and somebody that travels a lot, man, it drives me crazy. But there could be worse problems, right? Those are first world champagne problems. Connecting flights are the worst. So there it is.
I love that you just mentioned that because I was legit just buying a flight. I'm going to California for family and a bit of business, and from Montreal to San Jose, there is like connecting flights. I'm like, what the heck? But from here to San Francisco, there's direct flights. So it's so funny that you mentioned that. I 100% understand your feeling because, man, going in the airplane is one thing, but going up and down twice for no reason, I'm not a fan of.
Yeah.
And before moving on to this topic, Radesh, I don't know if I said the name right, they also mentioned food. So I'm guessing the Iowa food is pretty good as well.
Food is great. Hey, hey, I don't know. I can't see the name either, but they know what's up. Food's great here in the heartland. You know, if you like beef and pork, and I mean that's, you know, we got the farm animals here, man. So that'd be a win.
That's amazing. And Jordan, just to be respectful for your time, I want to ask you one last question before kind of finishing off this great conversation. You as a speaker, and this is a very personal question because I want to see how you do it because like I said, just by looking at your things, I see you as somebody that's a couple of steps ahead of me within where I'm going. And I respect the heck out of you, and even more now after this conversation. What do you look at, or where do you look at to become a better speaker other than the speaking industry? I don't know if that was a clear question, but do you look at other industries to perfect and master your craft as a speaker? And if so, what are those industries?
There's two things I would give somebody if they want to grow in their craft as a speaker. These are two things that I continue to pay attention to. Number one is evaluate the people that are doing a really great job in the space, right? So mimic the master. If for you want to be the next John Maxwell, well then study the way that Maxwell speaks or communicates. If for you it's Brene Brown or Mel Robbins or Tony Robbins, like study the craft and don't just listen to what they say, listen to how they say it, like their pace, tonality, energy, presence. Take copious notes on the way that they tell stories, the way that their body moves, their you know what they don't say, you know, their examples that they use, their cadence. So that's something that I continue to pay attention to. And then the other thing I would say, Chris, is get feedback. Get a lot of feedback. You know, so if I want to get better as a communicator, now I got to jump into a meeting right after this, but typically what I would do is after a podcast or after a speaking engagement, I would immediately ask you and say, hey, Christopher, I'm looking to get better in these specific areas. Could you provide some feedback in these areas? And I would be very specific with how I ask you those questions because specific questions leads to specific feedback. So it's not good enough just to say, hey, Chris, could you give some feedback?
Yeah.
Well, because you don't want to make it awkward, you're just going to say something like, hey, you know what? Great job. And it's nice to hear great job, but it's not always helpful to hear great job. So ask for feedback, get specific with your questions. If you're somebody that's really trying to work on storytelling, hey, I'm really working on storytelling. How did I do there? Or I'm really working on my pace. So as it relates to my pace, would you mind providing some feedback? Get feedback, mimic the master, just study the craft, you know, and ask for help. I got a long way to go. You know, when I get feedback, I'm like, wow, I didn't know. I don't know what I don't know. We all have blind spots. So I think feedback is the breakfast of champions, and we got to continue to ask for it often.
I love that. Feedback is a breakfast of champions, the highlight over there. So thank you for sharing that and being specific with that. And thank you for sharing your time over here. And before letting you go, I just want to kind of open this moment for you. Where is the best place that people could reach out to you towards if they're looking for coaching, to hire you, just to follow you? Where would that be?
Yeah, it would be Instagram. We do the most here on Instagram. So connect with us on Instagram. We'll connect with you. Send me a direct message. We'd love to connect with you, be helpful, be of service. You can visit our website. It's montgomerycompanies.com. I'm also active on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Anybody that reaches out, we'll be sure to respond. We'd love to connect with anybody in your community, Christopher. And before I sign off, let me say thank you for being you. Appreciate the energy that you put out into the world. One of your gifts, in the short time that we've known each other, I'm still getting to know you, but you bring great energy, and the world needs positivity. My friend John Gordon said it this way. He said, I'm not positive because life is easy. I'm positive because life is difficult. And your positivity stands out. And you bring great energy to the people that you connect with. So I want to say thank you for your energy and thank you for having me.
My brother, that means the world. Thank you very much. And it's very reciprocal to you. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because I truly believe it's not a game of competition. It's a game of collaboration. And the more people do this message of positivity out there, because it's not one person, it's not two. You named a couple of amazing ones, from Tony Robbins to Mel Robbins and so on and so forth. They're living their right, and they're living their journey, and we're doing the same. But the more we could spread this word of positivity out there is actually the way. So I love that. Everything you did mention will be in the description below, so they'll be able to contact you over there. Furthermore, for everybody that's watching, thank you very much. I do see over here we have a new follower, so thank you for that as well. And guys, if you want to ask any questions, don't hesitate at all. Me and Jordan will come back and check out the questions. We'll answer it on Instagram. And if you're listening to it 1 week later on my YouTube channel, which is Christopher Dedeyan, we'll answer those as well. Once again, Jordan, thank you for blessing us with your time. I am so looking forward to sharing the stage with you and meeting you in person, brother.
Hey, thank you, Christopher, for this opportunity. I appreciate the invite, and I look forward to staying connected for a long time to come. Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir. All right. Take it easy, man. Ciao.
Bye. Bye-bye.